guys, it's Daniel here, back with another review for this year's Christmas season. And today, I'm going to be reviewing what is quite possibly known as the most well-known animated Christmas Netflix movie of all time, and after seeing it for the first time, I have considered it a Christmas classic already. Yep, this is my first time visiting this movie for this review. So, sit back and enjoy my review of the animated Christmas movie, Klaus. So the premise of Klaus is that it follows a young man named Jesper, who is a cadet at Postman Academy, which is run by his father. The problem is that Jesper is not a very good cadet at this academy because he doesn't take his postman training that seriously, and he's kind of a smug, upbeat jerk. So, to teach him a lesson, his father sends him off to the island of Smeerensburg, where he is told to become a postman there and reach a certain amount of letters to give to his father, and he can't leave the island until he gets the amount of letters that he needs. The problem is that Smeerensburg is a very violent island where two current families are at feud with each other. And then, when Jesper tries to collect letters from everybody and doesn't succeed, he meets a woodsman in the woods named Klaus, who is very good at making things out of wood, birdhouses and objects, and primarily toys. So, Jesper decides to use this to his advantage by having the kids around Smeerensburg send letters to Jesper, which he'll use to repay his father, and sending letters to Klaus asking for toys, so Klaus and Jesper can deliver them to him. However, the two opposing families, mainly their leaders, are not fond of this new way of life, as it's bringing everybody together, even though it doesn't fit with the tradition of feuds. So, will Klaus be able to use his woodman skills to bring out the best that Smeerensburg can be, and will Jesper be able to keep his act up? Now, as I said before, this film is definitely regarded as one of the best animated Christmas movies ever made, because everybody, like, whenever they hear about the word Christmas animated movie on Netflix since 2019, the first thing I'm pretty sure a lot of people would talk about is Klaus, because it is definitely well known and very popular, and a lot of people were really upset when it didn't win an Oscar for Best Animated Film that year. So, since I haven't seen it before, but heard things about it, I decided to give it a watch for myself. And now, after finally watching it, after all these years of it being out, what do I think of Klaus? This is one of my favourite Christmas movies now. It is absolutely delightful and so good. Like, honestly, like, I don't know how much effort went into making this movie, but I'm guaranteeing that it is so much effort to make this the best animated Christmas movie it could ever be. Do I think it's the best one? I'm not sure about that actually, but I do think it is one of the greats. The first major thing that I should talk about with this movie, and it's one of the biggest key eye points for the movie for anybody who watches it, is the animation and the art style. This movie has a very, it felt like it had a really clashing mix of both 2D elements and CG. Sometimes I couldn't even tell which one was which. Most of the time it looked like it was 2D animation, but it could have been 3D, and sometimes the things in the movie looked like they were 3D, but it could have been 2D. I couldn't tell the difference. I love the genetic and energetic personality when it comes to how the characters move, as they not only move comedically, but they would also move subtly depending on the kind of mood that the movie wants to explore. Like, if it was like a hilarious moment, there would be some slapstick, and honestly, I think that the slapstick, unlike that Christmas, I think the slapstick works in the movie's favour because of the animation. But when the movie wants to settle down and let the characters sink in and we get into their psyches and also get into their personal development, the movie definitely slows down with the animation to give us some rich character expressions. And I think that they explored that very well. And the animation, I think, is one of the most unique looking animations I've ever seen, and I would love to see more movies that have this kind of animation because they can take so many advantages of it depending on which genre the movie is. Also, I like the attention to detail when it comes to how the colours of the movie start evolving. Because when we first see Smearensburg, it is very grey, very damp, and very, like, dull looking. But as the movie carries on and we start to see each member of Smearensburg starting to come together as one whole group of friends, everything starts to become more brighter and Christmassy because it sparks the light in Smearensburg that we haven't seen, but we totally start to see later on as they start playing with each other and caring for each other. And I love that attention to detail. Great job, animators. Now, one of the major things in terms of like marketing or like story beats of Klaus is that it really is meant to be kind of like a representation of what if there was an origin story for the Santa Claus character. And I think that without any magic at all, and only in like the very subtle and kind of realistic way they show it in this movie, I think that they present an origin story for Santa very, very well. Because the imagination of Santa is definitely being explored throughout the children's imaginative brains, because they come up with their own kind of theories about who Santa is, especially when it comes to like the magic reindeer, or that he leaves stuff under the tree and comes through the chimney. They come up with that kind of theory themselves, even though it's technically Jesper that's calling through the chimney to deliver these gifts for the most part. But I think that they definitely did a good job in capturing kind of like the magical whimsy that a kid would feel Santa is, while the adults actually kind of play a really big part into creating the Santa mythos as well, with Klaus doing like his regular making toy things, and also kind of has a little hint of like the ho 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 scene, but also Jesper comes to do it as well, because not only does he kind of help Klaus with the idea of maybe Christmas is the time where everything can be done right and the toys can be delivered for children to have them have a big surprise, but there is one scene where he does kind of create the origin of the naughty list. I won't give too much away about that scene, but that scene was pretty funny, but also very awesome as well, because it helps us put the pieces together of like how everything in the Santa Claus mythos comes to be. Of course, this isn't like a direct origin story for the Santa character, but it could be a possibility. Kind of like how Joker was like a possible origin story for the Joker character. This film is quite a possible origin story for the Santa character. Now, outside of the Santa Claus origin possibilities of the story as a whole isn't something entirely new. It does kind of have those same kind of cliches that some animated movies do have. Like the dorky guy who comes to a new place that is one thing, but then he lies to change the better things, but then something happens when his lies get revealed and he thinks, oh, nothing's gonna happen to me now. But no, oh actually, I think that I did a good job. I'm going back there to save the day and then everything is happy again. And you also have like the strict love interest that seems strict at first, but gradually learns to open up. See, not everything is original, but what lacks of originality, it makes up for in representation. Because one of the greatest things, and one of the most profound things about Klaus, is that it always loves to present a moral message about how a true act of goodwill can inspire another. Because there are many moments where characters have to show kindness to one another, and that the other person that they show kindness to will show kindness back. I think that this is a beautiful sentiment, showing that a good act of goodwill and kindness will inspire another, and is one of the pieces that we need in this new world. Because this is just something I personally feel like, but I personally think that this is a kind of message that we need nowadays. We need a society that will always have the act to be kind to each other, and one person is kind to one another and the other person does a kind thing back. I think that's a beautiful sentiment, and while this film does show that there is bad people, it wants to still inspire the good people to keep the kindness of themselves up and help bring brightness into this world. I think that that is one of the best sentiments ever made. And I think that this is definitely a movie that you could really look up to as a great representation of universal kindness. I also love how Christmassy the movie gets later on, because yeah, it does start off as a bit like, it's not very that great. It's kind of dull looking and very violent. But then when the movie starts to become more Christmassy and the colour palette brightens up and the constant speeches about what the meaning of Christmas and goodwill is, I just feel it gets me right in the heart with how fuzzy and wholesome the movie gets later on, and I love it for that. And I can definitely understand why this is a Christmas classic for a lot of people, even though it's only been out for like 5 years, since 2019, because it represents the warmth and heart of what Christmas is all about. So, what about the characters? Well, the film's main character, Jesper, is a very funny and intriguing main character, because the film does start off with him being like a smug, arrogant jerk, but unlike some arrogant jerks in other movies who don't really have too much to redeem themselves about, this movie does a good job of finding comedic potential with Jesper's smugness, because his witty banter with him and his general and his father at the beginning of the movie leads to so many funny moments, and Jason Schwartzman did a fantastic job saying those lines. And then when he gets humiliated, it's both rewarding and kind of pitiful at the same time, but still having hilarious moments. So the good thing I really like about Jesper is that they do find comedic possibility for his arrogance at the start of the movie, thus making him funny enough to care about. But the film also does a good job at showing hints and like stepping stages to Jesper's new conscience, because there are a few moments where he can make 1 or 2 mistakes or say the wrong thing, and he does apologise. So even though he is a smug jerk, a part of him does have a sense of guilt and a conscience that we can tell he is a decent guy deep down. And then later on, when he meets Klaus and Alva and sees the joy that brings to children, he learns to be a more sympathetic and polite person and see the true act of goodwill that will inspire everybody in Smearensburg. And it's all thanks to the idea that he comes up with delivering the presents, and even later on when he comes up with the idea of Christmas. And I think it's a very rich and natural character development for him, and I think Jason Schwartzman does a fantastic job voicing him. But of course, the main character that is really the heart and soul of the movie is the title character himself, Klaus, voiced brilliantly by J.K. Simmons. I think that he did a fantastic job voicing him. He captures like the kind of like bubbly energy that Santa Claus would need, but he does have his usual J.K. Simmons strictness when we first meet him, because he's a very secluded and alone man who wants to keep to himself, and he doesn't really like to get out that often and interact with other people due to a lot of things in his past catching up to him. But then when he starts delivering the presents and making presents and see what his hobby, what his passion is, can bring to children, he never thought he could see that again, and it helps him to really open up as a character. And just like Jesper, it's a very natural character development, and he really is like the main figure that brings the joy of happiness into the town of Smearensburg, and everybody seems to respect him for that, and I can respect him for that as well. And he has a fantastic backstory. I really felt sorry for him, and I think that J.K. Simmons did a fantastic job voicing his character. Or should I say, characters? Because interestingly, J.K. Simmons also voices the drill sergeant at the Postman Academy that Jesper went to. Not only is it kind of funny watching Jesper and the drill sergeant competing against each other, and the sergeant just getting so annoyed, which leads to like really hilarious ranting from J.K. Simmons behind the microphone, but I find it interesting that J.K. voices both these characters, and you can kind of make a little bit of connection and kind of a representation that maybe while the drill sergeant is handling Jesper's personality in a position that he takes with a strictness and cruel manner, Klaus is a character who takes Jesper into his kind of responsibility and job, but with a more compassionate and joyful way. It's a very interesting juxtaposition between these two characters. Alva is also a really good character as well. Sure, she does kind of fall into that cliche strict person stuck in a struggling environment, so she's turned bitter, but I really do admire her character development, because she starts off as a very strict person running like a fish business, even though it was originally a school where she was going to be a teacher, but things never really turned out her way. However, as Klaus and Jesper's cause for kids of Smearensburg start to increase, she starts to feel more upbeat and starts to feel more confident in trying to teach these kids in terms of how to write or to be happy with themselves, and it helps Alva evolve into a more positive person, and it's a very rich character development, and I love the spark and passion for teaching that she comes back to later on in the movie. And Rashida Jones from Parks and Recreation did a fantastic job voicing her. And then we have pretty much like the main villainess of this movie, Mrs. Crumb, voiced by Joanne Cusack. I think that this character is a really good villain. She's very strict, very not very positive, and only sees the feuds as tradition and that it should stick to that. And while you don't like what she's doing, you do understand why she's seeing the feud as the only way to move forward with life, because it's her ancestors' tradition for generation. So she has to follow up on the family legacy that leads with these feuds. You don't like what she's doing, but you understand why she's doing it. But what I really like is how, even though she does do something that is kind of evil, it does also kind of fit with the come-togetherness, because later on in the story, without giving too much, she actually has to team up with one of her enemies to take down Klaus and Jesper and to continue on the feud. So, as one of the other characters puts it, you want to make peace to end the peace. And I think that actually is very interesting, because even Mrs. Crumb has no choice but to team up and be at peace with some people, but only to carry on the feud. I actually do kind of like that. Like, in order for the villain to win, she has to take the hero's advice, which is kind of interesting, and I think Joanne Cusack gave a fantastic vocal performance as well. I also love so much of the vagueness when it comes to various elements that you would consider magical or supernatural, or some character developments that are very subtle, particularly towards the end of the movie. Without giving too much away, there's something that happens to a character that you may think is dramatic, but then there's hints that maybe their presence is still around, but we just don't know it. And it's a very iconic ending for a Christmas movie. And I thought that everything from the score, to the music, to the final moments of the movie, is where everything starts to become the most dramatic, but also the most genuine and heart-wrenching. And I think that the ending was fantastic. And the music, with the main song of the movie, Invisible by Zara Larsson, in all of its versions, was fantastic. Particularly this scene where they play it. It's such a dramatic and poetic number that signals Jesper's development into accepting kindness in the world. Now, I can't say I have any major problems with this movie. It is just a fascinating and compelling story from beginning to end. But if there is one nitpick, and it really is a nitpick, I'd say maybe I could have used a little bit less distractions with the cliches of the story. Particularly the liar reveal. There is a liar reveal story, and with most of the movie seeming very unique and taking advantage of its cliches but making something new out of it, the liar reveal cliche, they still kind of do it in a very cliche way, and I felt like I would have written it a little better, because it comes with the same stock of dialogue that comes with this trope. However, what I also really love about this movie is that they don't skim through it very long. In fact, come think of it, from the beginning of the liar reveal scene all the way to the end of the climax of the movie, all of it is just under 10 minutes. So, the movie is merciful in not letting this cliche drag on for too long, but it still kind of has its same similar cliche tricks. But also, I was just too distracted by how much fun I was having with the movie that I didn't care what cliches they had. Because overall, guys, I shall gladly say, as I put this hat back on my head, that Klaus is a very compelling, lovely, wonderful, and amazing animated feature from beginning to end, with fascinating characters, a good moral of showing love and care for others, how a true kind act of goodwill can always spark another, the Christmassy atmosphere, and just overall just amazingness. I think that this movie was fantastic, and honestly I can understand where people were coming from when they were angry when it didn't win an Oscar. Instead it was Toy Story 4, which Toy Story 4, I think it was pretty good, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people felt like that Klaus was a much better movie. And that's why, I think I'm going to give it a 4 3/4 of a star out of 5, because I can't quite get to the 5 out of 5. I thought I was going to, but after thinking about it, the cliches still were noticeable, but I think after doing more rewatches of this movie in the future, I think I'm going to find even more things to love about it, and might even think it's a masterpiece. And I'm actually really looking forward to watching the movie again to find even more stuff to love about it. But if you have not seen Klaus yet, I definitely recommend it, and I think it's definitely one of my new favourite animated Christmas movies ever. But anyway guys, what do you think of Klaus? Do you love it? Do you hate it? And what is the best movie that signals the message of showing kind towards all people and how a true selfless act can spark another? Let me know in the comment section below. I got more reviews to come. Now the next one I'm going to review is actually going to be the review that goes on Christmas Day. What a special review! But what movie or show can I review? And I do say show because this is what I was thinking. Since I reviewed Lazy Town this year, and I found that to be a really great experience for me to review it, why don't I take the nostalgia back and review the Lazy Town Christmas specials? Yes, that's what I'm going to do in the 25th December released review on Christmas Day, the Lazy Town Christmas episodes. Anyway, I'm Daniel Review movies, TV shows, and doing videos. Till then, peace out, man!